What is the most frequently asked questions that I get? And this happens almost every day and certainly every week. Is that people send me pictures, images of what they have, and they want to know, is this an original or is this a reproduction? And today we're going to tackle that very thing. In fact, the one thing that I want to talk about more than anything else is the number one artist that I get asked about are the artworks of Robert Wood. Robert Wood is a very famous, you probably know the name anyway. Robert Wood, you go to Walmart, or you used to go to Sears and J.C. Penney and F.W. Woolworth, and you could buy big Walmart, reproductions, paint. They look like paintings that are hanging on a wall, and they could be bought for, back in those days, starting in the 1950s is when they started selling them. They were going for $3, $4, $5. A nice frame piece might go for $8 or $9. I mean, they were very inexpensive, and they were big, so they had great decorative value. But these days, as the waters have become muddy, so to speak, and the people either don't understand or on purpose mislead people to try to sell them something as an original when it's really just a reproduction. It's very, very, very common. And we're going to take a look at just some of the things. But first, I want to take you on a real quick primer. This is like Art Reproductions 101. And I just want to run through these very quickly and show you 4 or 5 examples, just some close-up images of things and things that you can look for that give away whether something is in fact a reproduction. Now, this same little tutorial on reproductions I also have on our website, so that if you would like to go to our website, you can see some buttons on the left-hand side of the screen. And one of those buttons about halfway down says Tutorial for Reproductions. And this little primer that I'm giving you right now was taken very much from that little web page on our website. So the first thing I want to show you is this here is an older lithograph, and this is a close-up of a Robert Wood reproduction of a mountain painting. And you see a mountain, a dark side and a lit side, and then some sky in the background. But if you look very closely, you'll see that there's a number of little dots that make up the colors on it. That is not paint. The little dots are photolithographic imprints of color that are printed by machine. And you can, when you look at it close up, you'll see these little matrix of dots that make up the color of whatever happens to be the deal. This is the same kind of reproductive techniques that you see on your Homes and Garden magazine and on every magazine that's printed these days. I should say most of them are. When you look at the cover of a lady in a pretty dress, or if you look at a artwork on a cover or a photograph or whatever, you'll see it's made up of these little, this matrix of these dots. Okay, now the next one I'm going to show you is this is also a dot matrix image, but this one has been painted over with a clear acrylic gel. And the gel is what it is. It's put on nice and thick with a paintbrush, and it's painted over the reproduction. And what you see is paint strokes, and it makes it look like a painting. Now, it also brightens the colors and makes them look nice and fresh. Um, it's not exactly a technique that is made to defraud anybody or trick anybody. It's just made something that enhances the artwork. Now, because this next picture I'm going to show you, this is a close-up of a mountain scene, and you'll see by virtue of the raking light for which the photograph was taken, you'll see that there's all kinds of little brush marks going every which way. Those are imprinted onto the cardboard support. The way that this is made is the image is put onto, it's printed on a piece of paper. The paper is fixed to a real thin piece of cardboard. It's not like corrugated cardboard. It's a fiberboard is what it is. And it gives support to the whole thing, and then it can be put into a frame and nailed in, and it'll lay flat, and it won't crinkle up the way the paper does. And then in this particular photograph, I have circled 3 areas where it's most evident. And the first, really all 3 of these areas, they show the imprintation of these marks. But if you look closely, especially in number 2 here, I think it is, that the impressions of the brush strokes, they continue from the sky area right through the white of the waves, and they continue down into the water. So if you're doing this as a painting, if this was actually a painting, you would see a brushstroke for the background, you'd see a brushstroke for the waves, and you see a brushstroke for the water. But here you see that the same brushstroke goes down right through the whatever the image is. The brushstrokes don't pay any attention to what the image is. It's a sure indication of a reproduction that has been painted, that has been printed, and then with this texture of brushstrokes printed over. Okay, now the last image is very quickly. It's a nameplate that says Robert Wood. Some of the nameplates you see will say Robert Wood and October Morn or whatever the title happens to be, and these are nailed onto the frame. And those are their, just even decorative effects. It's really what they're originally intended for. But people get confused by that, and they try to sell these things as paintings because it has this little brass nameplate on it. And that's just not so. In fact, it's one of the questions that I ask people when they call me on the phone. They ask me about whether they have a reproduction or something. First thing I ask them, does it have a nameplate on it? Well, yeah, it does. And is it printed on some kind of board instead of a canvas? Well, yes. Then okay, I'll just tell you right up front without even getting off the phone. What you have is a reproduction. And they say thank you, and I say thank you for calling, and they'll be on their way, and I'll be on my way. Okay, now to kind of prove this point about what's going on in the marketplace, I went to eBay last week, and I found a number of Robert Woods. I can't remember. There's probably hundreds of Robert Woods for sale at any one time on eBay. And I just picked out just a few at random, and I picked them out from the most innocent to the most misleading. And we'll go through these, starting off with the basics, and I'll show you one. This is one that is described as a Robert Wood painting in the description. And here's a picture of it, nice big, it has a cheap frame. And the next thing I did, and going over this, was I went to have a little thumbnail of the pictures. They have one of this next one, which is a label. This label is from the Illinois Art Company, and it is from Windsor Art Products, which is a division of the Illinois Art Company. Okay, this is an absolute sure indication of a reproduction. The Windsor Art Products Company, all they did was make reproductions. They didn't ever do any originals. What they made was reproductions of originals. And on this little label, as you'll see, the title October Morn is actually in a stamp in red underneath the inventory number. Part of the inventory number indicates the size. Part of it indicates what, you can go to a catalog of Windsor Art Products and you will see that in this case, P412 is actually a reproduction of a Robert Wood painting. It'll show you a picture of it on their page, and you can see that this is a reproduction. But when you see this label like that on the back, it's an absolute guarantee that what you have is a reproduction. Okay, now we go to the next level. Here we go to a description on eBay of what they call a Robert Wood oil painting. Now, this is not a painting at all. This is a Robert Wood reproduction that has been put into a nice frame, and it has a little name tag on it. Here's a sort of a close-up of that. You cannot see from this image, you can't see the little dot matrix at all on it. But on the back, that shows the inventory number, and it shows the code, meaning the size or whatever it is. And then it has Mountain Hues underneath that is the title. Well, this is another sure representation of a reproduction. Also, when you go to the back, even this tiny little tear on the back, it shows that this thing on the back is not a canvas, but it is a board of some sort. And there's a little bit of wraparound with a little white area. You see there a little bit of wraparound of the paper that was glued to the board on the front, wraps around it, and is glued to the back to make sure it stays nice and stretched. And this is a giveaway because this is printed on a board or printed on a paper that is adhered to a board. And when you see this, you must understand that Robert Wood never painted on masonite. I take that back. Really early on, he painted on a type of fiberboard. But you'll never see a Robert Wood printed on masonite. On the more modern reproductive techniques, you never see one that is printed on a fiberboard or anything else, because everything that Robert Wood did is he painted on canvas, stretch canvas that has stretcher bars. It's a little about 1.75 inches, 2.25 inch bar that went around it, and the canvas is wrapped around the stretcher board, and then it's made taut, and then the artist would paint on that. And that's what Robert Wood did for virtually every painting that he ever did, is on canvas on board. Okay. Now I'm going to read this to you. I'm going to count the number of times that the seller on eBay said that used the word painting. And the description that he put on this, he said, "This beautiful vintage oil painting by Robert William Wood is a stunning addition to any art collection. The painting depicts a serene forest in the mountains, capturing the beauty." Let me get my glasses on here. Capturing the beauty of nature in exquisite detail, measuring 18 in length and 20 inches in width. This medium-sized painting is framed and signed by the artist. This piece is one of a kind. It was created using oil painting techniques, showing the artist's skill and capturing the essence of the subject matter. Its theme of nature and the forest is perfect for those who love the outdoors and appreciate fine art. This painting is a true masterpiece that will add elegance and sophistication to any room. And then they skip down, and in small print, one little line underneath all of that description, it says, not original, but vintage print. Now, this description was made to deceive. It is borderline fraud. Now, this one is a painting that's right there in the middle, showing a table, a bunch of other things that they're selling. This is described as a Robert Wood oil painting. Now, they ignored the fact that if you go to the back, there is a stamp, and this stamp says wind, it's supposed to be wind, fine prints. It's titled October Morn by Robert Wood, number 207, size 16 by 20. That is all embossed into the back of the board of which it was printed on. This is a reproduction, and yet the people insist on calling this an oil painting. Now, it's the same seller that sold the last one. Only on this one, they did not put that little disclaimer at the very bottom all by itself that said, vintage print, not original. That says, but I'm going to show you something here. Because you have to look closely now at this photograph. First off, you're going to see oil paint. Now, it has the appearance of oil paint because the paint is painted over that clear acrylic gel that I described in the first one. There's clear acrylic gel applied over the reproduction, and then over on top of that, there is the paint is applied. Now, I've blown this up, and I want to show you a close-up detail of this is the same area, but I've just blown it up, and you see greater detail. Now, what you're looking at here is you can see that there's a dark background and that there's a sort of a faded yellow background, and then there's oil paint. Okay, now I'm going to point out some areas, and here we go. If you look at the pink, where the pink arrows show, you'll see that there is a reproduction underneath this whole thing. The pink arrows point at the areas where there is obviously a reproduction that's been painted over with a clear acrylic gel. Now, take a look at where the green arrows are. The green arrows show where there is paint. Now, this is actual paint, and it has been applied with a brush and it painted over the reproduction. And the paint is made there to look exactly like an oil painting, except that It's not painted over the entire thing. It's only painted over areas where it can be blotched on to mimic the areas of brushed on paint. If we go back to the original image, you can see where there's paint that's been applied everywhere all over the thing. But according to the close-up, which is over, the close-up is of the, this is a close-up of where the original signature was. Now, the original signature was printed right along with the reproduction, and it said Robert Wood, and he had a typical brush signature that he brushed on his signature. He signed with a brush and paint, and then this is the typical style in which he painted. Now, what this person selling this did is they painted over the signature, sort of, but they left enough that you can make out Robert Wood. And then Robert Wood, he had a little brush mark going in different directions at the beginning and at the end of his signature, which is very easily discerned that this is the way that Robert Wood signed his paintings. But this signature is reproduced. But then it has been painted over. And if you look carefully at the W on Wood, you will see that the paint is painted around the W. And it's painted around the W in such a way that the W is discernible, but they painted through the second O of Wood, and they sort of loosely obliterated the D on Wood, but it's still very discernible. And then the R, O, and part of the B in rubber, those are discernible. And then the ERT has been painted over with paint to make it look like he had some additional things that he added after he signed his painting. Robert Wood never did that. He always signed his paintings after the painting was complete and dry. So, there are some examples of some Robert Wood. Let me see if I can find some. Now, let's give credit where credit is due. I did find 2 original Robert Wood paintings for sale on eBay, and they are original. This is the first one. And in the description on this one, let me pull that up here. Okay. Now here, the headline for the listing on eBay, it reads in all capitals, Robert Wood original oil painting, large, quote, golden days, and then in lower cases it says Eastern landscape. The description says very good condition, mid-career painting, Eastern landscape. Oil on canvas, 24 by 36, signed lower right, Robert Wood, circa 1958. And then further on the description, it reads, I inherited this painting from my parents who resided in Glenview and purchased it from an art dealer in the mid to late 1950s. Original frame size 29 by 41, gilded, meaning applied a layer of gold over it. Produced by Newcomb Macklin in Chicago at the time. Newman Macklin was a common source for the nicer frames Mr. Wood used. Okay, the first blaring green light on this one, without even looking at the pictures, the images that go along with this eBay listing, was the fact that it was framed in a Newcomb Macklin frame. Now, I cannot recall ever seeing a reproduction framed in a Newcomb Macklin frame. Newcomb Macklin is a very well-known framing company, and they were in Chicago. They expanded later to other places, but they were based in Chicago. And Newman Macklin made some very expensive and very fine, excellent frames. The next thing that I noticed was that they gave the provenance of the painting. They said, I inherited this painting from my parents who resided in Glenview and purchased it from an art dealer in Glenview, in California, in the mid to late 1950s. Okay, now they were just starting to make Robert Wood reproductions in the 1950s. There was no real well-developed, slick technique for me. They were all of the first type that I showed you the detail of, with the very evident little dot matrix on them. You could see on the early ones, you could see it from across the room almost. But they do make a note in there that Newcomb Macklin was a common source for the nicer frames. And that's true. That's all true. Now, the fact that they inherited from his parents and who purchased it from an art dealer, and they give the whole provenance, and it was purchased originally by this lister's parents in the late 1950s. That is another green light that this could be original. Okay, so from there, I just went to pictures. Now, the first thing you'll see is the picture of the framed painting. Very nice, beautifully done, and its colors are still fresh, clear, and you can sort of see texture of paint on there. Then I went to one of the close-ups, which I'll show you there. The close-ups show the brushworks go in the direction of the paint. And this is a big deal, because this is one of the ways that you can tell if a work of art is a reproduction or original. That if it shows that a brushstroke is going in this direction, and the detail shows that, yes, the strokes go in this direction, that would be an indication that it is actually paint. Another image in there is a sticker from Newcomb Macklin Company in Chicago. Now we know, verified by their sticker, that this work of art was framed by Newcomb Macklin. Okay, things are looking good so far. Then I went to another image, and the image on the back of this one, it says reproduction rights reserved by artist. Now, this is a common stamp by Robert Wood that he put on, I don't know that I could say all of his artworks, but a good number of his artwork, most of them, the vast majority, he put a copyright stamp on the back. And then the titles are virtually always in quotes, and they're written by hand by the artist. So in this case, the stamp and the title are typical of original works by Robert Wood. And when you see the stamp, sometimes he has another little stamp of a little artist there with an easel. That was a stamp that Robert Wood himself used. Sometimes his reproduction rights reserved is worded a little bit differently, or might say all reproduction rights reserved by Robert Wood, language like that. But the point is that the stamp reads that the reproduction rights are all reserved and kept by the artist. In other words, you cannot reproduce this painting without permission of the artist. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like it. If you like it, subscribe if you want to. But whatever you do, like always admonish you, be on the lookout. And if you go to eBay, I want to add be on the beware lookout. Because when you go to these things, if you're interested in buying a painting, these principles don't apply simply to Robert Wood. They apply to everything that you see on these flea market type arrangements, whether it's a flea market you go to that's in your own community, or it's if you go to a Goodwill or a Salvation Army and you want to buy something decoration, or if you go to eBay, if you go to Etsy, if you go to any of these things online, just please be careful. And I've got several hundred horror stories of people that didn't come to me until after they had laid over the money to buy the artwork. And I had to tell them, I'm sorry, what you bought is not a painting, it's a reproduction. And it doesn't have any real value except for the decorative value or the personal value, whatever it is, a memorabilia that you receive from the artwork. But it's not original and doesn't have any real art market value. So, thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Until then, be blessed.